So I'm James. I'm super excited to be here today. It's a real honor. And I'm going to be talking about time and how to spend it. And our time here is coming to a close. So I'm going to begin by introducing a person with a problem. His name's Woody. He's my son. He's 5 years old. And a few weeks ago, he had a specific problem. He fell and he banged his head on this step. And I kind of did as any parent would do. I kind of grabbed him up into my arms and I held him back. And he had blood pouring down here. I thought he'd banged his eye. I was just sort of panicked. But my wife calmed me down. And we got into the car and we did what any good parent would do. We took a picture. And then as I was putting him into his car seat, doing it up, he looked at me, he said, "Daddy, am I going to die?" And I did, I looked at him, I just went, "Yes." But not today. And the reason I tell that story is we all have that same problem. We're all going to die. Hopefully not today. Hopefully not during this talk. So imagine a bank account that gave you £86,400 every day. But at the end of the day, any money that you hadn't spent was wiped. What would you do? You'd spend it all, no? Some people wouldn't spend it all. Anybody know why it's 86,400? It's the seconds in a day, exactly. The clock is ticking, and there will come a day you'll go to the time bank, and there will be no more time for you. So how you spend your time is vitally important. If you don't spend it well, it's the same as burning money. And you don't do that, do you? Today's world, I think we're surrounded by all sorts of distractions and things that take up our time. One of the things is the emails that we get, the texts, the tweets, the 24-hour news coverage, this kind of constant incoming, the TikToks, the WhatsApp, the Facebook updates, all this incoming stuff we've got to keep up with. And one of the problems is our mobile phones. I call them the weapons of mass distraction. How many people here check their phone within 15 minutes of getting up? One of the first things you do. Some of you are liars. That's good. That's healthy. Okay. More than 85% of people check their phones first thing. How many of you charge your phones in the bedroom? Let me see a show of hands. Okay. So you guys, if you take nothing from today, apart from this, if you charge your phone somewhere other than your bedroom, this is what the data says, you will sleep better and you'll have more sex. You're welcome. Okay, so we're so addicted to our phones that 1 in 10 people check their phones during sex. That was research conducted at a very well-respected university in the States, and it was published in The Economist, which makes it a fact, in my view. So, there's about 2,400 people here. That means there's about 240 people here today who check their phone during sex. Can those people stand up, please? And tell us how you do it, you weirdos. I did actually give a talk somewhere, much smaller, about 50 people, and this guy said, "Yeah, but you can't you? Because the screen lights up." Let's leave that. Okay, but the thing is, get this. With food, we know there's a difference between junk food and good-for-you foods, superfoods, healthy foods, right? And because of that, we tend to eat more, or we try to eat more good foods, correct? But with time, we don't know the difference. If you didn't know the difference between healthy food and junk food, you'd eat more donuts, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? All right, only me. If you want to be happier, spend more on experiences and less on stuff, okay? And people would say to me, "Okay, James, that's great. I should spend more on experiences. What kind of experiences should I choose?" And I didn't know the answer. I had an opinion. There are things I like, things I don't like. But I wanted to have a proper answer. So I did what any curious person would do who doesn't really know, and I went and talked to people much cleverer than me. Economists, psychologists, anthropologists at places like Harvard and Stanford and Cambridge and Oxford and the LSE and MIT and NYU and Tokyo University. And what I discovered was that just as there are junk foods, And there are superfoods. There are junk ways of spending your time and superfood ways of spending your time. So there's ways of spending your time that will increase your odds of being happier, more resilient, more creative, and more successful. Now, as you know, we may know that eating healthy food is a good idea, but when someone turns up at work and you've thought, I'm not going to eat too much, but someone turns up with a box of donuts and they're free and says, do you want one? We don't always choose the right thing, do we? And then there's a Friday night and you say, I'm going to have 2 drinks and go home. We don't always make the best choice. So therefore, we need like checklists, things to be memorable, to help us, to nudge us. Think about the 5-a-day idea, to encourage us to do the right thing. So I put this together into a checklist, this idea. And if you follow this checklist, stories, as you can probably read there, STORIES. If you follow this checklist, if you aim for each of these things, they're all backed by science, you are more likely to be happy, resilient, and successful. I'd love to talk you through all of them, but we're going to focus on a couple today. And we're going to focus on story. But rather than just tell you about it, I want you to play a game. So if you can stand up in a moment, I'm going to get you to stand. And you're going to talk to someone that you haven't talked to before. And you've got 1 minute to tell a story. It should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay, here's the hard part. It should be about a time when something went wrong for you, or you did something bad. Who here now wishes they hadn't come to this talk? Just so you know, I've done this quite a few times over the past year, and it works. You are going to enjoy this. Just so you've got a little chance to think about the story you're going to tell. I was at one event, and this girl, about a 23-year-old, told a story about how she was in a boardroom with her boss, and they were presenting to their key client. She had the presentation on a laptop. She plugged it in. She opened it up, and what was on her laptop came up on the big screen. What do you think it was? There are some people in this room with some very bad ways of thinking. It was a letter applying for a job. Okay, so you have 1 minute, you'll then hear a bell, and you swap round and the second person tells their story. Ready? If you can stand, please stand and let's go. Ready? Okay, and the second person. Second person telling their story. Yeah? Okay, and sit down. Thank you. And sit. Now, you thought that was going to be awful, didn't you? But wasn't that fun? There's a very simple reason for that. We are hardwired as humans to love story. It's an evolutionary adaptation. Just as we love salty, fatty foods, the thrill of the chase and sex, so we love story. This works. Neuroscientists have figured this out. It works in a very simple way. When you tell a story, the person who's listening to you, the neurons in their brain fire the same as yours. They call this mirror neurons. That's the basis for empathy. Empathy leads to connection, connections to relationships, relationships to happiness, happiness to success, and all that stuff makes you more resilient too. Isn't that awesome? Story is a superpower. It doesn't matter what story you tell, if you tell a story, you will connect with other people. You are more likely to lead them to war, in business. But there's a type of story that you can tell that is more likely to fire up their mirror neurons. It's called the hero's journey. This is how it works. Good fortune, ill fortune. Good fortune when you're rich and healthy, your family love you, your team has just won the Premier League. Ill fortune is when Liverpool's about to win the Premier League. Or your team has just been banned from the Champions League. Okay, so what happens in these stories, this classic story, every culture in the world tells stories in this shape. It's the story of the Battle of Britain. It's the story of Thanksgiving. It's the story of Cinderella. So think about Cinderella. She has a mum and a dad. She's the hero. Then her mum dies. Remember the story? Then her dad remarries. Remember that bit? And then he dies too. Awful. She's in the hole. Things are terrible. She lives with her stepmother and her sisters. But then, a bit of fuss with the slipper. But she meets the prince and happily ever after. You know the story, yeah? Now just imagine for a moment if Cinderella hadn't had lost her mum and dad and had just lived with her mum and dad, met the prince, happily ever after. What kind of story is that? It's a rubbish story. And the thing is, the reason that every culture in the world tells stories in that shape is because it resonates for us. It's the story of our ancestors who had to cross rivers and oceans, or had to deal with cold nights and ice ages, or fight off enemies. And it's all of our story, because we've all messed up. Things have gone wrong for all of us. Let's go to intensity. So we make a mistake when we think about happiness. We all have this kind of fantasy that life's going to be great when we've done the work and our feet are up on the sofa or on the sun lounger. But it turns out we're wrong. We're much happier when we're going through some sort of really intense experience, like surfing, like being in a jazz band, being intense and in the moment and focusing. The awkward thing about this is you can't always be surfing. You can't always be in a jazz band. You might be doing something else. But you can design flow. There are 8 rules you can use. So the first one is delete distractions. It's the Dark Funk rules. Makes me think of Daft Punk. How about you? And dancing in a massive hall with loads of people. So delete distractions, put your phone down, turn your phone off. Be active, especially if you're physically active, like if you were dancing today in this hall with everybody today. You know where this is going, yeah? The R is really important because the lights are going to come up in a minute, and this is about risk. Risk is key. Creative risk, physical risk, like when you're climbing or something, and social risk, like you might embarrass yourself. Now, I'm a British man, so I can't dance. And some of you will also feel that you can't dance too, but that's okay. We're going to do this together. And to make it less awkward and more fun, we're all going to dance the same. You with me? I don't know the guys at Daft Punk, but I know this guy. So everybody, if you can stand up, if you can, please. We're all going to dance together. You're all going to copy me, and then I'm going to choose someone else, and someone else is going to lead us. Are you clear? We are going to do silly dancing together, because this is an experience of intensity which will lead you to be happier. Okay, we'll go.
Ooh, I get a queasy feeling when I see my brothers reeling. Don't you think that 18 pints is enough to help you strut your funky stuff? Yes, I get an uneasy feeling when I see my brothers eating, fitting in a carry on the way to the club. Well, they just can't get enough. My friends can't dance, but if you want to,
Okay, sorry. The happy ending is Woody's fine. He's in his Elsa dress, his eye's okay. We waste too much of our time today. There are junk food ways of spending our time which waste your time, the precious seconds, hours, and days you have. But there are superfood ways of spending your time that will make you happy, resilient, and successful. It's the Stories Checklist. Thank you. Oh. Great dancing, by the way.